You may remember the story of Amy Cooper, called a Karen for calling the police on a black man after a confrontation in Central Park. As the story goes, this woman was out with her dog. The dog wasn't on a leash. This other man, whose name is Chris Cooper, and I guess they're not related in any capacity, told her the dog has to be on a leash. And she said, she argued with him basically. This guy, Chris Cooper, pulled out some dog treats and coaxed the dog over. The woman freaked out, was like, stay away from my dog. Called the police, and then the video begins. She's saying this man is threatening her, and she's definitely over the top with the whole thing. Well, as many of you know, she ultimately got arrested over this. My personal opinion on the whole thing is it's really dumb. People get into arguments all the time. Shut up and go home. Bar fights happen. It used to be in this country and in many places around the world, if you got into a bar fight, the cops would just say, shut up and go home. So long as, you might have a black eye, a bruise, a cut or something. They'd be like, whatever, man. You guys get into a fight, you leave. Nowadays, everything is absolutely over the top. But the crazy, okay, so we've gone over the gist of this story. We can rehash who was right, who was wrong. But I'll tell you, my friends, we are watching things get worse when it comes to the cult. The cult is gaining more and more power. This woman was charged. The charges were dropped. Oh, thank heavens, you're saying. And they weren't really dropped, though. You see, this woman was forced to undergo a Reeducation therapy as to why she was a bigot. And then, only then, did they say she has served her punishment. They could have put her in jail because in this country, the idea is, no cruel and unusual punishment. Instead, she underwent some kind of woke critical race equity theory re-education or training. And then once she had a breakthrough, they deemed that she was qualified or that she had done enough and that she was now free to go. Now, of course, you may be saying this woman underwent this therapy or whatever, probably didn't really believe it or care, was rolling her eyes, just like when all of you do these diversity trainings at work and you're sitting there going like, geez, these diversity trainings are awful. You still do it, don't you? That's how indoctrination begins. You think it's no big deal. Yeah, well, she went through it. She's probably just rolling her eyes and laughing about it with her friends. But the next generation of people come in, and this is now the norm. You get in trouble, well, you have to go to a therapy session, therapeutics to learn about equity. And then more and more people start to accept it as the norm and as what is expected. It reminds me of that old story about the chimpanzees and the science experiment. You ever hear this story? I think Joe Rogan talked about it. They put a bunch of chimps in a room, and they put like a ladder in the middle of the room, and they put fruit on top of the ladder. And then when one of the chimps would try and climb up to grab the fruit, they'd come out with a hose and just spray all of the chimps down. Oh, no, getting sprayed with water does not feel good. Eventually, when one of the chimps would go for the food, the other chimps would stop him and start beating him up. Dude, you're going to get us sprayed with water. One day, they take one of the chimps out, and they put in a brand new chimp who's never experienced the hose or the ladder. He immediately goes for the ladder to grab the fruit. The other chimps grab him, beat him up. One by one, they replace the chimps. Eventually, there's a group of chimps in this room who have never experienced, they have no idea why they can't go on the ladder. If any, they stop spraying with water, basically what happens. And so later on in the experiment, the gist of it is, once this entirely new group of chimpanzees are now beating each other up, they don't know why they're doing it. There's no more hose. They stopped spraying them, but the chimps still just say, hey, that's tradition. That's a good way to understand that if we move forward in this direction, this is what you will get. You may think it's silly that this woman had to undergo this treatment, but what happens when they replace all of, I should say, what happens when all of us age out and die? And then our children inherit this world where the system just does this stuff. Is that what you want to leave for your kids? It's a shame. So many people say, I'm just not going to have kids. I don't want them coming into this world. And it's, well, there you go. Congratulations. The world will just get worse, right? Don't we want to leave something behind that's great? We can travel the stars and develop better technologies and learn about the universe. I guess some people don't want that, and, up to each their own. Here's the story. Charges against Central Park Karen Amy Cooper dismissed. Misdemeanor charges were tossed Tuesday against Amy Cooper, the Central Park Karen, who falsely accused a black bird watcher of threatening her after she completed a handful of therapy sessions. Now, I just want to say, I do think she was over the top with her, her behavior, The guy did threaten her dog, though. Like, he didn't say, I'm going to get your dog, but he was threatening her dog. Threatening in the literal sense. Or I should say threatening in the, it's hard to describe. It is literal. You know, you don't have to tell someone you're going to punch them to threaten them. You can make other, insinuations. Anyway, they say Cooper had faced up to a year in prison on the charge of falsely reporting an incident in the third degree. But a judge granted Manhattan prosecutors' request to dismiss Cooper's case after she completed 5 therapy sessions designed for introspection and progress. Assistant District Attorney Joan Iluzzi Orban said at a brief virtual hearing, Cooper, who was white, was accused of lying to cops that an African-American man, Christian Cooper, was threatening her and her pooch. An incident caught on cell phone video in May. Christian, who is no relation to Amy, was telling the woman to leash her dog. Psychoeducation about racial equity is woven into each therapy session to prompt understanding and reflection. Iluzzi Orban told the judge of Amy Cooper's time with the Critical Therapy Center in Manhattan. The Critical Therapy Center, psychoeducation on racial equity. They sent the woman to a re-education center. They're calling it a center. They are educating her. This is happening. Mrs. Cooper's therapist reported that it was a moving experience and that Miss Cooper learned a lot in their struggle session. I added the word struggle, in their sessions together. You know what a struggle session is? Back in the Cultural Revolution in China, they'd take people who did not agree with their cult ideology and they would shame them and scream at them in public and make them feel awful. Well, regular people, the previous generation, I should say, didn't want to experience that, so they just did as they were told. They bowed down and said, please, I'm such a pathetic coward who is not willing to sacrifice anything. I just want comfort. Too many people in this country do the same thing. I know the communist Chinese murdered and massacred 100 plus million people. Don't get me wrong. My ire is more directed at people in this country who would just say no. You know what I would have done if I was this lady? Well, first of all, she shouldn't have freaked out the way she did. But come on, you're really going to take it this far? Tell everyone to shut up and go home. Why did this story get any traction? But I'll put it this way. Look, if I acted a fool and got caught on camera, I'd probably just accept the responsibility and be like, and maybe that's what she's thinking. If anyone ever came to me and said, you can go to prison or you can go to the re-education center, I would say, shove it. I'd actually say something more explicit than that, but, lock me up. I don't care. I'm not bending the knee to your psycho cult. Amy Cooper asked by the judge if she wanted to speak and she replied no. Her lawyer also declined to talk, saying he agreed with the prosecutor's assessment. Christian Cooper had refused to cooperate in the prosecution, saying Amy Cooper already paid a steep price following global outrage over the incident. I actually respect that. I mean, the dude filmed her. They had an argument, and then he was like, dude, she's already getting roasted, man. So that's respectable. Sylvia Ducevici, founder and president of the Critical Therapy Center, told the Post on Tuesday that generally therapy as described in Amy Cooper's case is not part of a program in the traditional sense. For example, you don't attend a class with other people. It's actually individualized psychotherapy sessions. The sessions are tailored to each individual person based on the issues they need to work on. Let's use this as an example. If someone has issues with racism or sexism or homophobia or so forth, we actually do a critical inquiry into the person's beliefs and what brought them to that place. It's the person meets the political, she said. The political. The political. What does that have to do with a punishment for filing a false report? Well, welcome to the cult, my friends. The director asked whether clients have to talk to those they wronged as part of the therapy. Ideally, that would be great. But it's up to the person who was wronged, she said. If you were the victim, you would decide what you would like the healing process to look like. Ducevici, while declining to comment on Amy Cooper's case at the center, has gotten referrals for therapy from city prosecutors before. Iluzzi Orban said in the court that the diversion program Amy Cooper completed with Manhattan Justice Opportunities was a punishment that was consistent with other misdemeanor cases. Noting Miss Cooper's lack of criminal background, the ADA said, we offered her consistent with our position on many misdemeanor cases involving a first arrest and alternative restorative justice resolution, designed not to punish, but to educate and promote community healing. Restorative justice. My friends, it is happening all around you. It is only getting worse. There will come a time where your transgression will be legitimate, will be illegitimate, and they will force you to undergo critical race equity training, re-education centers. These were things of myth. They were jokes. I mean, not of myth, like we knew they existed, but not here, not in the United States. You committed a crime, you get arrested. You told someone a naughty thing, they told you to shut up. Here we are. I want to make sure you understand something. I have this tweet from Jack Posobiec. This is actually pretty funny. Jack Posobiec quoted this user who said that essentially alluded to the fact that Jack had no evidence Chris Cooper threatened this woman. So he said, Jack initially tweeted something like, what about the Facebook post from this guy, Christian Cooper, where he did admit to threatening the woman's dog? Someone said, there's no such post, you're a liar. Jack then posted the Facebook post and the individual deleted their tweet. But here's the post. Christian Cooper said, Central Park this morning. This woman's dog is tearing through the plantings in the ramble. Me, ma'am, dogs in the ramble have to be on a leash at all times. The sign is right there. Right away, this dude's being a Karen. She's minding, look, you mind your own business. All right. Is it really that big a deal? There's a dog romping about in the ramble. So this guy had to just stick his nose in someone else's business, right? Her. The dog runs are closed. He needs his exercise. Me. All you have to do is take him to the other side of the drive outside the ramble and you can let him run off the leash all you want. I mean, to be fair, he is right. Not only that, she could easily get one of those retractable leashes. She could have done that. Her. It's too dangerous. Me. Look, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, but you're not going to like it. Her. What's that? Me to the dog. Come here, puppy. She says, he won't come to you. We'll see about that, says Chris Cooper. And now here's a quote from him. I pull out the dog treats I carry for just such intransigence. I didn't even get a chance to toss any treats to the pooch before Karen scrambled to the dog to grab the dog. Don't you touch my dog. That's when I started video recording with my iPhone. And when her inner Karen fully emerged and took a dark turn. Now, let's be honest. Christian, for the most part, is not the bad guy here. This Amy Cooper really was off the rails. I mean, in the video, she's like pulling her dog and it's like really awful. Like, dude, take care of your dog. Don't yank on the, she's like grabbing the dog and dragging it around or whatever. And it was pretty brutal. So I don't think there's, for the most part, good guys in this story. Some are more guilty than others. Chris didn't do like that much wrong, but he did try to coax the dog away with treats. If somebody did that and I had a dog, I'd freak out too, because people will give, like, listen, what if the dog's allergic? What if he's trying to give the dog chocolates? You don't know what he's trying to give him. You know what, man? You know that dogs can't have grapes, onions, garlic, avocado, chocolate. There's a lot of things dogs can't eat. And a lot of people don't know this and feed this stuff to their pets. So if somebody pulled out food, tried to give it to my dog, I'd freak out too. But I don't care about all that. Chris Cooper made a good point. She already paid the price, man. She got roasted online hard. Re-education centers are upon us. And if you think it's not going to affect you, if you think, well, I'm not going to commit a crime, so I won't have to go into re-education, it's not about you. It's about your kids and the next generation. You think this is bad? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Daily Mail. New York principal sends parents pamphlet asking them to rate their whiteness and urging them to be white traitors who dismantle institutions. Mark Fetterman, the principal of Eastside Community High School, reportedly sent the documents to all parents at the school. The cult is expanding. These psychotic, dogmatic individuals, they're winning. You know, man, there's a threshold. I will always stand up for my principles, liberty, freedom, the right to express yourselves. And I will always oppose psychotic neo-racism, racism, and identitarianism. But there's a threshold where eventually they gain so much power, our ideas become irrelevant. You ever see the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith? It's a terrible movie, mind you. Maybe it wasn't that bad. The graphic novel, way better. Okay. Admittedly, I did not read the graphic novel. I was just talking to somebody who was explaining the general concept of what I Am Legend is about. So I did skim through it for the most part, but I didn't read through the whole thing. The general idea that was not conveyed in the movie is this. Or whether this is a big part of the novel or not, there's a really interesting idea in the phrase, I am legend. There's a period where the majority believes what you believe, and you're just a normal person, same as anybody else. But as the cult ideology spreads, eventually you become the outcast. You become that, the outlier, essentially. Eventually, society is nothing but woke individuals. And if you want to function within it, you must be like them. I Am Legend. You have a guy who's hunting vampires and killing them in the middle of the day when they're sleeping to wipe out the vampire plague. Also trying to cure them, I guess. That's what it was in the movie. But eventually, everyone becomes a vampire. The vampires eventually capture this man. He's sitting in a jail cell, looking out this window down at all of the vampire citizens who look up at him in fear. Why? If 99% of people are regular people, and let's say 99 out of 100 people, it's regular people, and there's one vampire, and that vampire is killing people, well, they fear the legend. They fear that vampire. What happens when the vampire turns 99 people, and there's only one regular person left hunting them down? To the vampires, he was the mythical creature, the one who had the ability to walk in the sunlight and would kill them in their sleep. They feared him. He was now the legend. It's amazing, isn't it? That's what's happening. That's the threshold. The ideology of the cult mob is taking over. They control the cultural institutions, and they say anybody who opposes it is far right. And you know what? The international institutions, mega corporations, they love it. It gives them power. They love the cult. They feed into it. They pay for it. They fund it. Mackenzie Bezos, billions of dollars dumped into the cult. It's happening. Will it win? Well, I'd say for now, they've taken the battlefield, especially with Joe Biden, who is definitely woke, and the far left pushing all of the stuff. You can argue that Joe Biden is not a socialist, but he's certainly woke. He's certainly pushing critical race theory. Probably doesn't even understand what it is, to be honest. Trump didn't understand what it was either, but still had some people working to ban it in government. And all of this critical race theory stuff is an absolute violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, as is this action right here. Depending on what Amy Cooper was told in the therapy session, it may very well have been a violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But these people have taken power to such a degree, they're openly violating the law, and nothing will be done about it. Take a look at this story. They say, the 8 white identities graphic includes a colored meter ranging from red to green, indicating that those who identify in tiers, including white supremacists, are bad, and those who identify as white abolitionists are good, targeting someone based on a race. But what they do is they argue white isn't actually a reference to race, it's a reference to institutional authority. That's how they try to bypass the law. And it works sometimes. They say it was not immediately clear if the documents were intended solely for parents or for them to discuss with their children. But here it is, the 8 white identities. White supremacist, white voyeurism. Look at white privilege is 1 degree separated from white supremacist. Do you see what they do? White privilege. Then they have white benefit, white confessional, white critical, white traitor, and white abolitionist. They say, quote, there is a regime of whiteness, and there are action-oriented white identities. People who identify with whiteness are one of these. It's about time we build an ethnography of whiteness, since white people have been the ones writing about and governing others. Amazing. Well, depending on what I say, I'm either white or not white. It's the hilarious paradox of the cult. I've mentioned this many times, but during Occupy Wall Street, I would have people say to me, you're white, so you don't get a say. And then when I point out, actually, Tim Pool is mixed race, they go, oh, I'm so sorry. Tell me whatever, and I'll do whatever you say. These people were racist. The most racist people I've ever encountered in my lives. In my life. In my lives? In my life. I've not encountered such extreme racism before. There have been people, like my home was vandalized when I was a kid by white supremacists, but actually encountering this, it's crazy because I've actually encountered some like legit hardcore racists, but even the racists that I've talked to, like I've debated with people who are alt-right, interviewed some of them, they at least still recognize, go do your thing. We don't want to have anything to do with you if just get away. I'm not saying every single white supremacist and racist, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of them that are extremely fascistic and literal Nazis, and that's horrifying. I'm saying I've not encountered them going to these political rallies. The people I met at Occupy Wall Street and the critical race theorists are, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're hardcore racist, and it's absolute. Do as you're told or else. The thing is, though, I'll tell you what's weird. You know, I was talking recently with a friend about the diversity and equity trainings they do. And I had a friend saying that they play this video, they make you watch it, and then they talk about stereotypes about various races and why it's wrong. And I was thinking to myself, says who? Says who? So here's what I was wondering. If you're at work, let's say you're Asian, Latino, Black, just mixed race in any capacity, or Slavic. Because apparently the Coalition of Communities of Color say Slavic is not white. So let's say you're watching this diversity and inclusion video, and they say it is a stereotype that all Asians are good at math. Well, if you're Asian, get offended by it. Accuse the company of racism, right? Like, what would happen if I was sitting there? Because I had a friend telling me this is what they did. They said, here are some common stereotypes that are wrong. And what would happen if I saw this and they said Asians is a stereotype to say Asians are good at math, and then I got offended? Because it is, I believe, statistically true. I could be wrong. But I'll put it this way. My family, particularly studious and proud of the hard work that they did in teaching their children to be good at math. My mother tutored me in math before I even started kindergarten. So how dare you say it's not true? What are you trying to imply? We're bad at math? It's a stereotype? You're claiming that if someone says we're good at math, it's racist? You bigot. You think we're dumb? You get the point? The point is, no matter what someone says, that under this cult ideology, you are always wrong, no matter what. So if someone plays the video, I'll tell you this. They're never going to get rid of the video, but they can at least push the video to absurdity, I suppose. I think it's insane that we would put people in a room and then tell them all of the racist things about people, and then it's bad, but here are all the racist things. Why would you do that? And what if I complained it was discriminatory, that they made me sit there? It was humiliating. They were talking about Asians and people were laughing and giggling, and it was, and then sue for discrimination. The problem is, under this ideology, I understand that, people want to do better, and that's why there's a vulnerability, because people don't like racism. But under this ideology, there is no way to be right. No matter what you do, you are wrong. In the end, it's just control. And if the system is always, it's set up in a way that you are wrong, no matter what you do, they will always have the power. You will go to the Reeducation Center when you commit an infraction, and they will re-educate you, and it'll only get worse. Now, maybe things get better. Look, I'm not a psychic. I'm just telling you, it's worse now than it was before. Sending this lady to a re-education therapy session, that is as creepy as it comes. These schools sending out these white identity cult things, it's a cult. Stop acting like it's not. Oh, sure, I know. I can already hear the left saying, yeah, well, Trump supporters are in a cult. Sure, the Q people who believe all this crazy stuff. Yeah, absolutely. They believe crazy stuff because of some online forums. Yep. The wokeness stuff, that's a cult too. Same thing. You believe insane garbage. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.